Previously on Cork Out History.
Here is just a short recap. In the last episode, we went through from the Roman times to the Germanic tribes invasion to the Moorish invasions to the times of the Reconquista and Pelagio in the north and the Reconquest taking over the Moorish lands, which introduced us to the first Christian kings. And that brings us up to speed. Which brings us to the place where we are going to start today with Fernando I, or Fernando Magno, who is one of the first promoters of the Reconquest.
Welcome to another episode of Cork Out History,
Where we drink Portuguese wine.
and we talk about Portuguese history.
Mostly the wine.
My name is André,
And I'm Inês.
and welcome to Cork Out History.
The real start and the Juicy King's rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole!
Okay, and so why is this a juicy king's rabbit hole?
Oh, mate, because there's nothing that doesn't happen in here. So, where should we start? Things are gonna get really, really cinematographic, I would say. It's proper Game of Thrones style. I mean, minus the dragons, but yeah. It is, it's gonna be fun.
Once again, this is a very rocky start that we don't hear so much about.
Oh, we definitely don't. I had never heard anything about this. To be completely fair, if you have a very limited time to teach these things, I mean, this could be considered almost more important in the history of Spain than it would be in the history of Portugal, because the kings that we are going to be speaking now for this first rabbit hole, they will be kings of the kingdoms of Castile and Leon and Galicia, and those are all more modern Spain. However, things don't exist in a vacuum. For us to understand how things came to be, since we don't want to, we want to look at things from a different angle, I think this is a very funny angle to look things from. I guess we need to get started. We might as well start with the King Fernando I, or Fernando Magnus, as he would be later known. So, as anything, when you call someone the Great, they are quite instrumental in how things play out. So, this Fernando Magnus, he's the first true promoter of the Reconquest, and only during the 11th century does this Reconquest movement begin as a purposeful and solid movement. And this is it, Fernando I. So, and he's going to be the papa of all our juicy kings that are going to go completely mad on each other and give us so much to talk about. Okay, so saying that the Reconquest starts as a purposeful and solid movement is not the same as to say that it's an absolute and unwavering thing. That's not how things work. So this lasts for a long time. Politics and what we can call the Game of Thrones being what it is. There were frequent alliances between Christian lords and Moorish lords. Both sides were very fractured into several small kingdoms during this period, which lasted for centuries. And in this, it invited every kind of treaties and alliances, and we will be able to see excellent examples of this over and over through these episodes.
One good flesh and blood impersonation of this can be found in the figure of Sigismund Davides. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. The Mozarabe. And what is a Mozarabe?
Mozarabe is the population living under Muslim rule but following the Christian religion. Religious freedom was allowed, and the populations could either convert to Islam or continue adoring the Christian god if they paid its tribute. In the long run, and especially in the south, there would be a complete conversion to the Muslim culture and way of life, but for the religion and god itself. A lovely example of this reaches through a document called, I'm probably gonna murder the name now, Indiculus Luminus, where they rant about how the new generation has completely adopted the culture and can communicate better in Arabic than in Latin. It is important to make a distinction between Arab and Arabic. Arabic includes the Mozarabe population, like Christians and Jews, which communicate in Arabic. At the time, the cooperation spirit between religions was outstanding, and many innovations stemmed from this, with science and culture all being carried in Arabic.
Right, these people were living in this land and occupying a cultural space and a religious space that changes, and that's of course subject to change during the time, but that it's also plural and different, and I got lost there. But the idea is that there's way more than just black and white as we're usually painting it.
Exactly. I think it's very often painted in, like we said before, like there's the Christians and then the Moors come over and they conquer, and then we conquer again and the lands are Christian again. And yes, but admittedly during those, in some areas it wasn't even it didn't even reach to be 200 years. In the south it was a lot longer. It was one of the most abundant and rich and cultural rich times in the peninsula, and of the entire of all the time in there. It was a super peaceful time. There were no wars going on, and the cultural development was just incredible. One of the things that we always mention when studying this in school, back in 5th grade when we were 11, it's about the things that the Moors brought to Portugal, and they got us oranges, and they got all these funky watering systems.
Yeah.
Yes, but there were so much more.
Yeah.
The development in medicine was incredible at the time. Architecture was incredible at the time. Engineering, it was just outstanding. It was out of this world.
Once again, I need to highlight how we will need to have an episode just dedicated to that. But that's another story.
So back to, you were telling me about Cisnando before we got completely carried away.
Yeah, completely off track. But yeah, Cisnando, this guy was has a very colorful life that kind of represents what this time was also about, and how things were, once again, not black and white. And he is kidnapped as a child, and he's raised as a Moor. And then he becomes a diplomat, he turns coats again, and starts working for Fernando I, that Fernando that we were just talking about. Why were we talking about this?
I did question when you went in there. I was like, oh, you're going there.
But why? I have no idea.
Now we need to keep it. Because we talked about all of this in the middle.
And this was really interesting what we just did, but why does this guy matter? What?
It just has an example. So, yes, I know it's a little bit of a detour, but this was just an example. This is just to say there was a lot of diplomacy going on between the kingdoms, and, people were switching from one side to the other. Conversions were going on all the time, and they didn't even need to, because there was freedom of religion, and you didn't actually have to convert. No one was really too worried about that, which I think is great. Oh, and just this guy, just to finish, since I got him in the first place, he becomes no, not the first, but he becomes the Count of Coimbra, which is one of our biggest and most well-known cities today.
Now cue the touristy drops.
In Portugal. So if there's any of you in Coimbra listening to us, which I doubt, here you go. Little shout out to you.
Shout out to the people of Coimbra! Whoa!
We got Guimarães and we got Coimbra already.
Yes, yes, that's it. Okay, so this...
Andre is struggling with his pop filter at the time. At this moment.
This is not alive.
That's true.
Thank God.
Thank God for that. Thank God for that.
God, we would be fucked.
I'm keeping that. Oh God. Okay, go on.
So Fernando conquers Viseu and... Oh, Jesus Christ. Boring. So this guy, Fernando, So this guy Fernando is going to be fundamental in understanding the beginning of Portugal.
He gathers, like, by the end of it, he conquers everything, and he gathers, like, this massive kingdom, comprising of the realms of Castela, Leão, and Galicia.
So Fernando decides to leave each of his children a bit of his mighty kingdom. His elder son, Sancho, gets the kingdom of Castela. His second son, Afonso, gets the kingdom of Leão.
Which was a questionable choice, since Leão can be considered better than the kingdom of Castela. And in this way it ought to have been given to Sancho, who was the eldest. But Papa Fernando has his favorites, and so he gave the kingdom, the best kingdom, to his favorite son, Afonso. And this is going to be important to all the drama coming next.
Yeah, and just to finish, he gives Galicia. He gives Galicia to his youngest son, Garcia, which was until then a county that was part of Leon, but which Fernando then turns into a kingdom in its own right.
Yeah, and lo and behold, even his two daughters get something. With his daughter Urraca being given a city, the city of Zamora, and his other daughter Elvira being given the city of Toro.
And things were relatively peaceful for a while until the death of their mother in 1067. But in 1068, Sancho wins the War of the Three Sanchos.
Yeah, I have this allows me to mention one of the things that's like, every generation we're gonna have several Sanchos and several Afonsos and several Urracas, and in
So
here,
basically, yeah,
just
yeah,
in
this,
here,
there's four Sanchos.
yeah, there
here.
was
Three Sanchos.
exactly. Three
Yeah.
Sanchos. So it's a battle. It's called the Battle of the Three Sanchos because they were basically all called Sancho. Like, what are the odds of this? Very high, as it turned out, because they
Yeah,
all have the
clearly.
same fucking names.
Clearly, but Sancho, not our, but the Sancho that we're talking about right now, he wins that battle as well, and he carries on a series of battles and winning a series of things quite unlikely. Why is it quite unlikely, Inês?
Wins the improbable war of the Three Sanchos against Sancho of Aragon and Sancho of Navarra, which only goes to show the incredible lack of creativity in naming their children at the time.
So it's improbable the name of the battle.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Anyway, the Sancho that we're talking about here, he goes on to win a series of battles, including a battle against his own brother, Afonso, and this is the Battle of Llantada.
In the same year has the Battle of the Three Sanchos. He also attacks the Taifa of Badajoz. Taifa is basically the name that we give to Muslim kingdoms at the time. So the Moorish kingdoms, they weren't called kingdoms, they were called taifas. They had a leader exactly the same, but the word is taifa. So Badajoz, which is today a city in Spain, at the time was part of the taifa of Badajoz. And Sancho attacks this taifa. This was problematic, and this is the first breach in their sibling bond, so between him and his brothers, because the taifa of Badajoz, albeit an Arabic kingdom, was allied and under the protection of Galicia and his brother Garcia. So Garcia, the ruler of Galicia, one of the three brothers, he was the taifa of Badajoz was under his protection and allied to him, and so comes in Sancho and he attacks it. So already not a great start.
No, not a great start at all, but that's how it's gonna go, and it's not gonna get better, is it?
No, it's not about to get any better at all. Like, actually, in an amazing prolific year, Sancho still fights and wins over his brother Afonso in the Battle of Llantada. So Afonso, as you remember, he was the second brother, and he was the favorite of Fernando the First. So that one, he loses to Sancho. So Sancho is just going around winning everything. Although this does not seem to have very serious consequences, it seems Sancho was under the impression that Afonso was having like some expansionist thoughts towards his kingdom, but after sorting the differences in the battle, the two brothers remain cordial. Like so much so that when Afonso shows up at Sancho's wedding, they come up with this plan to invade Galicia, the kingdom of their brother Garcia. Very nice, like that sibling bonding. I mean, you go to someone's wedding and you just decide to invade the kingdom of your little brother. Nice
well,
work,
but
guys.
they do. Yeah, they do. Mm-hmm.
They do. I don't have siblings, but I mean, that's the way to go. In the meantime, the kingdom of Galicia, who was given to the younger brother, turns out to be a bit more of a headache than anticipated. There's revolts and resistance going on everywhere he turns, and these culminate in the Battle of Pedroso, which we've mentioned before, which he won. Garcia won it against Nuno Mendes, who was the Count of Portugal. And in this battle, so Nuno Mendes, he dies, and this is the end of the lineage of Vímara Pérez and Mumadona Dias, and the end of the line of the Counts of Portugal. So the line is extinguished here, and the kingdom of Portugal is united, like completely united with Galicia, and it stops existing, like we said before, for 23 years. So we're united with Galicia.
Right, okay, but this is not all of it for this year, and Garcia has to face a few more things before the year is over. So in June, both of his brothers invade his lands, although they're unable to keep them.
Yeah, because, I mean, shocker, these two brothers who've been to battle before and who decide to invade their other brother's land, like, they have another fallout. Shocker, I know, big plot twist. They have another fallout and basically they're fighting again, and Sancho wins again. So eventually he gets distracted for a little while, but eventually Sancho would then conquer Galicia once again, and he wins again and for good, and he defeats Garcia again, and he locks them up. Lovely family, I told you, lovely family.
He locks him up.
Yeah, he locks him up. So he wins, he takes his kingdom, and he throws him in jail.
So that's how Sancho gets crowned the king of the three kingdoms in that year, right?
Yeah, so still in the same year. I mean, these people achieve so much in a year, I can't even, okay? All my plans that I had for last year, I put on hold. The last 5 years, all my New Year's resolution are always like for, the next 10, if. Anyway, this guy achieves a lot, clearly. He's crowned the king of the three kingdoms in the very same year. So once again, he gets the kingdoms that his father had distributed amongst the three brothers. He gets them all united under him.
Okay, but what about his sisters? They had two sisters, right?
Yeah, they had two sisters, and it's like, these are fierce ladies. So even though the other kingdoms fall, so, the boys had two kingdoms, boom, gone. The sisters had two cities. One, Elvira, she stands up to him for a while, but eventually, like, her city gets taken over. Elvira and the city of Toro were unable to stand for long, but Tujaca, in the city of Zamora, she resisted. She resists for a while. He tried to negotiate with her, like, offer other towns, do this, come on, just be nice, open the doors to your brother, and she did not. And eventually, Sancho had to lay siege to the city. Well, had to. He did it anyway. At this time, both Garcia and Afonso, the brothers, they were both imprisoned. Later on, Afonso manages to escape thanks to the help of this sister Oaxaca. I mean, seriously, she's doing everything. She's keeping the city up. She's getting, like, the brother out somehow. I mean, please, this woman is magical.
How?
I don't know how she did it. So she gets him to escape, and he goes and takes shelter in Taifa of Toledo, so in the Moorish kingdom. So there you go. He escapes his brother, a Christian kingdom, and he goes and gets shelter in the Moorish kingdom. So again, another example of how, fluid these things are.
Yeah, and things moved, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right, okay.
The siege drags on, and then a nobleman from Zamora, he deserts the city, so he gets out of the city of Zamora and he requests to meet with Sancho, with the king. He's planning to sell some secrets in exchange for a pardon. So basically, he's running away from the city. I want to meet with the king. I have some information for you, so you can pardon me. Oh, was he really? No, he wasn't. Ta-da-da-da, in the oldest plot twist in history. This works, somehow. And he gets an interview with the king. And he murders the king! Oh no! Who saw this coming? And amazingly enough, I mean, the incompetence of these people it reveals the incompetence of our governments today. Because this guy, he managed to get an interview with the king. He murders the king. And then he can escape all through the camps back to the city. And they don't catch him. How amazing is that? So now, Sancho is dead.
Right, and where does that leave us?
So basically, the two brothers that he had imprisoned are free. And they both come up north again. Now, what happens here, Sancho, when he died, he had no heir. So at least there's no difficulties. Afonso, the second son, becomes the king, and he gets the three united kings again, and he's going to be the one that we remember furthest, and he's going to expand the kingdoms a lot. Now, this wasn't all like super easy at the beginning. Both Urraca and Afonso get accused of plotting to kill their brother, and actually there were even rumors. I just saw your reaction. Actually, there were rumors of incest between the two. But we're not. I don't have enough sources to comment on that, so it's probably just bad mouthing the amazingly and fierce woman who, was doing all the work for her brothers. Urraca actually undergoes a trial by combat, like we've seen in some movies and stuff like that. But hey, it's deemed inconclusive, so I don't know. Maybe someone got an arm chipped off but didn't die in the next 3 days or something. They don't know.
Right.
They don't know exactly what happened there. But yeah, she's free to go. Basically, her loving brother was the one ruling now. So yeah, all is good, and Afonso becomes the king of all the kingdoms, and he goes by the title of Rex Spaniae, which would be Latin for something like the King of Spain, even though, bear in mind, Spain is nothing like the Spain that we have in mind today. But yeah.
So 1 year after, and if that was not enough, all this mess between the brothers continues, and Afonso calls Garcia to a meeting, which turns out to be no more than a pretext for an ambush, and Garcia is then imprisoned once again.
Yeah, I know. This guy has the worst life of the lot.
It's horrible. So he stays there for almost, for 12 years, and he dies in prison.
And he's so dramatic. He must have been like the emo of his time. Before dying, obviously. When he died, but before dying. He asked to be buried in chains as he had lived. And in his tombstone, it was written, "Here lies Lord Garcia, King of Portugal and Galicia, son of the great King Ferdinand. He was captured by his brother using a trick and placed in chains. He died, So...
Right, so this is not clear when exactly was this tombstone sculptured, but if we assume it dates from around the time of his death, this should be the first record of the title King of Portugal. And that's...
Exactly.
That goes full circle, and we finally arrive in Portugal.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's almost the end of the rabbit hole. Not quite, but
Not quite. But definitely a big step on our way.
It is, and it is amazing that it's the first record that we have of that title.
And of course, wait a minute. We know this is not Portugal. Like, we're not talking about the country Portugal, blah, blah, blah. We know that, but it's the first written mention of something that is going to lead us to that. And that's why, yeah.
Yeah, of this exact title. So, yeah, it's nothing more than that, but it's still quite an interesting curiosity, I would say.
Apparently, Garcia was also a favorite of the poets of that time due to his, well, let's call it tragic, but I think that's kind of an euphemism because
everything happened
really
to that
terrible.
guy. Yeah. From his fucking brothers. Can you believe that? Yeah, he was super popular with the poets, and they made a shit ton of ballads about him.
Well, reading is fundamental.
I think that should be the last line to our first episode. Reading is fundamental, kids.
And this is where we'll stop for now. Stick with us and join us in the next episode of Cork Out History in 2 weeks.
Until then, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Cork Out History Pod, and on Twitter at Cork Out History, where you can reach out to us, let us know your thoughts, and discover more about the upcoming episodes.
Don't forget to rate and subscribe wherever you're listening to us.
Your comments are crucial so that more people can find us.
Bye! Bye!